Hello, good evening. This is News Tonight here on GH1 Television with me, Awisi, Dede, Djangay. Let's take a look at our headlines tonight. And tonight, a motion of reparations resetting the UN, immigration, gender equity, climate change, and the Gaza war feature strongly in President Mahama's address at the 80th session of the UN General Assembly. On Inside tonight, we analyze key points from the president's speech. 4 alleged miners killed after Galamsey pit collapse at Trifo, Mampong. The Ghana Standards Authority announces plans to introduce mandatory certification management systems for mining operations to promote environmentally responsible practices across the sector. And in business, World Bank report warns of Ghana not achieving upper middle income status beyond 2025 if major reforms are not undertaken. On the international front, total number of confirmed Ebola cases in 7 as latest outbreak kills 35. We have details of these and many more coming up shortly. Stay with me. Grateful for your time this evening. The news is coming to you live from our Platinum studio here in Accra, and it's also streaming live on Facebook at GH1 TV. My name is Awisi, Dede, Djangay. Now to our biggest story for tonight on Inside. On Insight, President John Dramani Mahama has hinted at Ghana's plan to present a motion at the United Nations General Assembly seeking reparations for Africa. Speaking at the 80th session in New York, he highlighted the injustices inflicted on the continent through slavery. He further called for support for the Global South to mitigate the effect of climate change, noting that Africa's economy suffer the most despite contributing the least to the problem.
Slave trade must be recognized as the greatest crime against humanity. As the African champion on reparations, Ghana intends to introduce a motion in this August body to that effect. More than 12.5 million Africans were forcibly taken against their will and transported to create wealth for the powerful Western nations. We must demand reparations for the enslavement of our people and the colonization of our land that resulted in the theft of our natural resources, as well as the looting of artifacts and other items of cultural heritage that have yet to be returned in total. We recognize the value of our land and the value of our lives, as did our colonizers, as well as the governments that happily paid reparations to former slave owners as compensation for the loss of their property, in quotes, and that property for which they received compensation was paid referred to enslaved people who had been freed.
President Mahama also cautioned world leaders about the dangers of artificial intelligence in spreading misinformation. He reiterated the call for Africa to be granted a permanent seat on the UN Security Council with veto power.
It's never been more critical for us to protect this one space that brings and holds the world nations together as a community. The internet, social media platforms, and artificial intelligence offer us the illusion of connectivity, when in fact what they do is reinforce isolation by using algorithms that ensure that we do not receive new ideas and perspectives, but rather more of the same content. We are served alternative facts and manipulated images, making it easy to disseminate disinformation and sow seeds of division amongst communities.
Well, let's have a conversation on this particular matter. Dr. John Kwapong is the Democracy and Development Fellow with CDD Ghana, and he joins me on Zoom to have a conversation on this. Good to have you on the program, sir. Well, President Mahama makes a strong case for a reset for the UN Charter after 80 years. Is he justified, and what types of reforms are we looking at?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. He makes a very powerful case for this reset agenda at the global level, especially by also tracing the historical antecedents of the United Nations, going as far back as even the formation of the League of Nations and how many African countries were present at the table back then. And then if you look at the number of countries now who are sovereign, independent in the region, and yet within the configuration of the United Nations, the one place where it appears that, quote unquote, all of the power in the organization rest, which is the United Nations Security Council, that there is no what he called for a permanent seat in that council. I know over the years, different countries have expressed the need for different reforms within the United Nations, greater representation, but particularly also taking a look at the Security Council, its configuration, who has a permanent seat, the power of the veto, and all of that.
Let's stay a little. Oh, okay.
Those who currently have permanent seats with the veto power, I do not have the political appetite for, in my opinion, for these kinds of reforms. But he does make a strong case for it, and it will be very interesting to see whether the UN as a body receives this call for reform and granting Africa a permanent seat with veto power on the Security Council.
Well, you've clearly made your stance on giving your thoughts on the Security Council program reform that the president is asking for. But let's stay a little longer on the reparations that he mentioned. I want to find out from you, what are the practical steps that we would need to take formally to take this through?
There has to be some determination of, who has to pay the reparations. There has to be some determination of the amount involved. And then there has to be some determination then of how whatever amount is arrived at, is sort of divvied up among those who would receive the reparations. I mean, so if it's going to come to countries, then of course, each state within these identified countries will be the ones to receive these reparations. But the other side of the equation of the reparation argument is those from whom reparations is being demanded from, must also agree that reparations has to be paid. And that, for me, becomes the other challenge of this reparations argument, even if you can get a motion through that says we do agree that African countries, as a result of slavery and colonization, are owed some form of reparation in this kind of amount to be given to African states to use for X, Y, Z. The colonizers and those who participated in the colonization of our continent must also agree that they would pay these reparations. And that, for me, would be the other challenging part of this equation of demanding reparations from the West.
For purposes of education, the reparations may take different forms. We have the financial compensation, we have development funding, and even returning of looted artifacts. Tell us what would be more of expectations from Africans when it comes to this?
I think all of it would have to play a role. I mean, we have seen some of the cases of returning of certain artifacts to particular countries. That, for me, would be, it would be a good thing to do. development funding again, because if you think about some of the things that occurred during colonization and the resources that were taken out of the continent to other parts, of the world, that one could ostensibly argue that could have been used for the development of these countries that were colonized, then again, some form of development funding would be another strategy through which you can make some reparations. I'm sure if you bring that development funding issue up, some of the Western donors are likely to argue that, well, over the years, they have made substantial investments in the continent through all the different development things that they have supported or funded. But that would be one strategy that can be used. You also talk about financial compensation. You have to make some determination of what is an appropriate amount of compensation and how that compensation gets divvied up among the countries, depending on, again, what the lived experiences were like under these colonial rulers.
Right, Doc. On the issue of migration, the president used examples of Ghanaians who've excelled in other nations to prove a point. Before I pick your thoughts, let's watch what the president said earlier.
Let's dispense with the euphemisms and dog whistles and speak frankly. It is not a mystery that when leaders of Western nations complain of their migration problems, they are often referring to immigrants from the global south. But many of those immigrants are climate refugees. And interestingly, the global north emits 75% more greenhouse gases than the global south. However, the effects of climate change are more severe in the global south because we lack the resources to address them effectively. And so when the desert encroaches on our villages and towns and they become unlivable, we are forced to flee. Madam President, we cannot normalize cruelty. We cannot normalize hatred. We cannot normalize xenophobia and racism. If we're going to tell a story, let's not tell it slant. Let's tell all the truth. When we speak of migrants, we speak of Mami Awisi Frimpong, a judge on the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. She's the first black female judge on any of California's 4 federal district courts. She was born here in America to immigrant parents from Ghana. We speak of Peter Bosman, a medical doctor in Ghana who moved to the town of Piran in Slovenia in the 1980s and later became the first black mayor of Piran, the first black mayor in Slovenia and in the whole of Eastern Europe. We speak of T. Michael, the iconic Ghanaian Norwegian artist and designer. And of course, we speak of the late Kofi Annan, former United Nations Secretary General.
Doc, I'm sure you heard the president there. We know migration is quite a complex situation. What's your take on the submission?
And, it's an issue that it's not all black and white, especially now, even in a place like the U.S. where there's a lot of conversations around immigration reforms, and how you treat illegal immigrants. I like what the president did in the sense that he puts it in a balanced perspective to say, look, when we are talking about immigrants, we are also talking about a group of people who make very positive, productive contributions to the society in which they emigrate to and find themselves in. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, within certain sections of society, that is the part that is missing in this conversation. Surely, if there are people who have emigrated from their countries to other countries and are breaking the law, are causing all manner of harm to the new society in which they find themselves in, I 100% agree that you must deal with them. But in finding the appropriate policy solutions in dealing with them, I just hope that we don't get caught up in framing all immigrants as a monolithic group that are problematic to any society they find themselves in. Now, I appreciate what President John Mahama did in this instance by highlighting examples of the productive ways in which immigrants who migrate to other countries make positive contribution to the new societies in which they find themselves in. I think it's a good way of helping us, come up with the right policy solutions in trying to deal with whatever challenges that receiving countries feel they face as a result of two quote unquote immigrants migrating to their countries.
Right, Doc. Before you go, let's take the president's submission on natural resources. I beg your pardon, especially when we are dealing with issues of illegal mining and galamsey. Let's take a listen to the president.
Madam President, an increasingly insecure world is witnessing upward spending on defense budgets of bilateral partners and steep cuts in official development assistance. Since July 2024, it is estimated that there's been a 40% drop in humanitarian aid globally. In this era of global uncertainty, Africa must exercise sovereignty over its natural resources to raise the necessary funds to ensure the well-being of its citizens. The days of parceling out vast concession areas to foreign interests for exploitation must come to an end. We'll continue to welcome foreign investment, but we must negotiate better for a bigger share of the natural resources that belong to us. And we must insist on value addition to these resources. We're tired of the continued image of poverty-stricken, disease-ridden rural communities living at the periphery of huge foreign-controlled natural resource concession areas. We're tired of having people extract the most they can from us and in return offer us the very least by way of respect, consideration, and dignity. We're tired of not being represented in ways that reveal the richness and complexity of our history or acknowledge all that we have overcome to arrive here in this liminal space of untold possibilities.
Doc, your final thoughts on his submission?
On this, though, I would place the responsibility back on the resource-rich countries. So if I take Ghana, for example, we have gold, we have oil. The nature of the agreements which we strike with these foreign interests who help us extract these natural resources, we cannot put it all on them, in my opinion, as though they are, quote-unquote, the bad guys in all of this equation. I think the onus is also on us to come up with the kinds of institutional arrangements, the kinds of policy choices we make in a way that looks also for our best interest, that allows us to gain as much as we can from these natural resources. It's the one area in this natural resource conversation that I won't always place the blame on those who come in with foreign direct investment in these sectors. I think we also have to shoulder some of that responsibility in terms of, if it belongs to us, what kinds of choices are we making and how are we positioning ourselves in such a way that we can gain some strength and an upper hand in some of these conversations and some of these negotiations, so that ultimately, like the president said, in resource-rich countries and communities, you don't have people living on the periphery but enjoying the full benefits of these natural resources.
Doug, generally, how would you rate the president's submission today?
A very good speech, a very powerful speech. It represents some big, bold ideas and represents some of the things that the president has shared in other forums. But I think it was a very powerful message to send to the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, for bringing us up to speed on his thoughts on the president's submission. That brings us to the end of Insight on News Tonight. Yeah, welcome back to the program. This is still News Tonight here on GH1 TV with me, Awisi, Dede, Djangay. Two other stories. A tragic incident unfolded in the early hours of Thursday at Trifo Mampong in the Trifo Heman Lower Denture district in the central region, where a galamsey pit collapsed, trapping 4 people underground. 4 persons have so far been confirmed dead, while 1 has been reported to have escaped. According to reports, the 5 individuals involved were working illegally in the pit. 4 were underground, while 1 operated the pumping machine above. The operator survived and rushed home to raise the alarm. Police and rescue teams, including NADMO officials, are currently on the site working around the clock to retrieve the remaining victims and secure the area. The district chief executive for the area, Isaac Yosen, told our correspondent Yabwejan, that preliminary information suggests the pit belongs to a known illegal miner. The DC confirmed that he has ordered the immediate arrest of the pit owner as rescue efforts continue to either retrieve the trapped individuals alive or recover their bodies. Still on illegal mining, pro-environmental group Eco-Conscious and a member of the Ghana Coalition Against Galamsey insist the only means to address the canker is a declaration of a targeted state of emergency in areas affected by the issue. Coordinator for pro-environmental group Eco-Conscious Citizens, Awula Sewa, spoke to my colleague Joshua Kojomensa earlier.
What is needed is the feet on the ground. You need to get your armed forces there. Because if you just declare them as security zones, and that is it, nothing is going to happen. I heard Awisi say that what they are going to do is, according to him, in practical terms, the same as a state of emergency, which makes one wonder why you can't declare one. But you need to have the armed forces there, ensuring that the environmental criminals are being cleared, the same of the water bodies. This is a step in the right direction. But you see, what sort of astonishes me is that we're in September. In opposition, we're told that if the political will was there, this matter could have been sorted out in 4 months and the likes. We had the NDC store was lining up to say declare a state of emergency, declare a state of emergency. We would have thought that in opposition, the plans were being made so that as soon as you win elections, you hit the ground running. We're in September.
Well, the Ghana Standards Authority has announced plans to introduce mandatory certification management systems for mining operations to promote environmentally responsible practices across the sector. Director General of the authority, Professor George Djangay, revealed that a new code of practice for small-scale mining will help standardize the use of equipment and safety measures in line with international standards while safeguarding the environment. He made a disclosure at the authority's annual stakeholder meeting.
The annual stakeholders meeting of the Ghana Standards Authority brought together players in the industry, government agencies, and staff of the Ghana Standards Authority to address emerging challenges and capitalize on new opportunities in the standards and quality infrastructure space. The deliberations also provided insights into the authority's financial performance, operational achievements, and strategic initiatives.
Entity rely on the movement of society. As technology is advancing, we need to also adjust our activities to that. We have a digital space in this country. We know digitalization has taken the world by surprise. So we are also working towards that area to also standardize digitalization issues. Agribusiness is a key area. If you go to our markets, sometimes you see we have the weights and measurements and all these things in place. Sometimes people do some olonka and use stones to hit the bottom and all that. All these things should be well monitored.
Director General of the Ghana Standards Authority, Professor George Djangay, also announced that a new code of practice for small-scale mining will be introduced to regulate equipment use and safety measures, ensuring compliance with international standards and protecting the environment.
The Mineral Commission is doing very well. They are doing a lot of work with the regularization. And the Ghana Standards Authority, we also come to help them and collaborate with them so that we can get code of conduct and how to harmonize practices in the use of equipment, safety practices and all other things so that we can meet other international standards.
The engagement, which was themed Standardization in National Development, also highlighted the contribution of the Ghana Standards Authority to economic development, trade facilitation, consumer protection and safety.
Now, away from illegal mining, the Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, has announced that over 2 billion Ghana cedis has been disbursed nationwide to the District Assembly Common Fund since the NDC came into power, adding that government is committed to making all necessary mechanisms available for an effective local governance system. She made these comments at the opening of a two-day national dialogue on decentralization and responsive governance in Accra.
The two-day national dialogue on decentralization and responsive governance is a platform to assess the current state of the local government system, interrogate the challenges, and build consensus on actionable reforms to strengthen service delivery from 2026 to 2030. In her opening remarks, the Vice President highlighted the government's commitment so far.
So far, over 2 billion Ghana cedis have been disbursed through District Assembly's Common Fund to support development initiatives and improve essential service delivery at the community level. This is just one demonstration of our resolve to see to it that resources are used responsibly and that the promise of decentralization translates into tangible improvements. But resources alone are not enough. We must ensure that our development interventions respond to the needs and aspirations of our citizens.
For his part, the Minister for Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, Ahmed Ibrahim, indicated that development is a collective responsibility and called on all stakeholders to contribute transparently for success.
The religious leaders occupy that crucial role in our ministry, have a role to play in making sure we all fight unemployment together, we all fight social abilities together, we all fight corruption together, and we all fight wasting together.
The dialogue, which is attended by ministers, regional ministers, MMDCs, religious leaders, and the academia, featured presentations, critical questions and answers sections, panel discussions, among others, to ultimately deepen the country's decentralization system.
Moving away from governance, now to education, because the headmaster of Winneba Senior High School, Hayford Mensah Tete, has attributed the growing indiscipline in senior high schools to the decision by the Ghana Education Service to take away the power to discipline recalcitrant students from teachers. According to him, the current system being run in senior high schools makes it difficult for offending students to be punished, hence leading to the cases of lawlessness being recorded in schools. He made this remark during the 14th annual GHOne Hammond Memorial Lectures.
Indiscipline among students, especially in senior high schools across the country, continues to be a major bottleneck that could undermine national stability. At the 14th annual GHOne Hammond Memorial Lectures, organized by the 1997 group of the Winneba Old Students Association, headmaster of the school, Hayford Mensah Tete, highlighted challenges schools face in managing students' behavior, citing interference from both political figures and parents. He specifically attributed the rising indiscipline in senior high schools to the Ghana Education Service's decision to strip teachers of the authority to discipline unruly students.
When you have to debordinize a child, they will tell you, no way, you can't debordinize a child. All these interferences. And because of that, now the child knows that I am untouchable. because my father knows the minister somewhere, or knows GS director, or knows a politician somewhere. So now the child thinks that he or she can do whatever he or she likes. Woe unto you if you dismiss. They will tell you that under the free SHS policy, you can't dismiss a student. So if it's persistence, you can dismiss. But in the code, in the document they have given to us, it is there.
Former Minister of State in charge of tertiary education, Professor Kwesi Yankah, who is also an old student, urged parents to dismiss Western cultural influence in the upbringing of their children.
Our maybe politicians, maybe leaders or policymakers, better still, appear to have been openly influenced by Western values. That is the bottom line. The child has the right. Of course, we know children have rights, but you just do not import almost everything head to tail from the West to govern. And the issue that was mentioned here, the importance of the cultural factor, considering our situation and how the children were brought up.
The 14th annual Dwona Hammond Memorial Lectures brought together prominent education stakeholders and all students to discuss the pressing issue of indiscipline in senior high schools and propose solutions to this challenge.
As the world races to achieve quality education for all by 2030, as stipulated in a Sustainable Development Goal 4, children at Akilka MA Basic School in Takwa Insuem face a different reality. Their classrooms are unsafe, infrastructure is crumbling, and teachers are in short supply. This is leaving pupils and parents deeply concerned about the future of the education in their community. There's more.
The Akilka MA Basic School currently operates in a makeshift structure. Head teacher Richard Arkum revealed that due to the poor conditions, teachers often refuse postings to the school. This has resulted in only 4 teachers remaining to manage the entire school population.
There is no teachers' quarters over here. So when teachers are posted to this area, they don't accept postings because when they come, even water to drink is a problem, where to sleep is a problem. So we have to stay at Mile 8 and then walk from there, come every day to school. So look at this. So even as a result of this, many teachers posted to this area, they refuse. That is why we have a shortage, a vast shortage of teachers in my school. As I'm talking now, the whole GHS, I don't have any teacher. The whole GHS from Form 1 to Form 3, I don't have any teacher. When you come to the KG, for instance, KG 1 and 2, only one madam is taking care of them. And then class 1, class 2 is combined under one teacher. And then class 3, class 4, 2 is combined under one teacher. And then as I'm talking now, class 4 and 5, no teacher there.
The school's PTA says countless appeals have not yielded any positive result.
Yeah, brepa. Said a while by who you dang. Said the dang is it here. The 2 1 more 2. And ye, that is way on my nankasa. And a fossil ye. Cement. Near again now, mine kasa. Oh, share KG dang cry war we are. Ukalano, in foot through near the teacher for no crab bar.
A pupil of the school made a heartfelt appeal to authorities, pleading for urgent intervention to rescue their education.
We started school hatchet. We shut down society. And I'm a good GHS. Chance diner a tree a change. So a good school dining. Yes, you had a great yet for because in chance dining. If a sum and chance dining, it's also cement. I the best in school dining. And then you paint in so I check. Skin your paint something the painting school dining. Okay, boy.
Let's do some security-related stories now. The Northeast Regional Police Command, in collaboration with the Narcotics Control Commission, has intercepted a massive consignment of restricted drugs, together with 6 suspects. The 1,195 boxes of 120 20 mg tramadol, popularly known as Red, were concealed in a truck at Nalirugu.
6 suspects, Al-Hassan Brahima, Yakubu Muntaka, Abdullahi Shakur, Mumuni Idrisu, Mumuni Yakubu, and Moses Ayorik were arrested on September 18 after 2 trucks were intercepted. The vehicles had been loaded in Sankasi, Republic of Togo, and were headed to Bintri near Lanerigu in the northeast region. A search revealed that the restricted drugs were concealed among other goods. During interrogation, the suspects confessed that the consignment was destined for Moses Ayorik at Bintri, who was expected to deliver it to another individual at Gushegu. The exhibits have since been secured as evidence. All 6 suspects remain in police custody, assisting with ongoing investigations. Authorities say efforts are underway to track down other individuals linked to the case.
At Pantan Hospital in Accra, staff, students and community members rolled up their sleeves for a massive cleanup exercise with a call on corporate Ghana to support efforts at modernizing Pantan Hospital. The activity forms part of a year-long event marking the hospital's 50th anniversary under the theme Honoring Our Legacy, Shaping Our Future.
Management of the Pantan Hospital led the cleanup exercise to improve sanitation and promote healthy living as part of its Golden Jubilee. The exercise brought together hospital staff, students, and members of the surrounding community, highlighting the hospital's commitment to a clean and safe environment for patients and workers. The director of Pantan Hospital emphasized that cleanliness and greenery are now top priorities for the facility.
As a health facility, this is what we can do to also make sure that our environment is clean, to improve our staff well-being and patient well-being, in line with the SDG, which talks about good health and well-being. The theme for our year-long anniversary celebration is honoring our legacy and shaping our future.
He further appealed to President John Dramani Mahama and corporate Ghana to support efforts to modernize Pantan Hospital, stressing that much of the infrastructure has become dilapidated after 50 years of service.
So that 50 years from now, generations would look back and say that it was during our Golden Jubilee celebration that His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama built a modern facility for Pantan Hospital.
Community leaders also welcomed the exercise, noting that keeping the hospital and its surroundings clean protects not only patients but the wider community.
And I also used the opportunity to appeal to corporate Ghana, Pantan Hospital, because we are in need of so many things. To the road minister, Yesreno. If I meet the Pantan Hospital, yesterday, Honorable MC, Omadaroma, a higher hospital. It doesn't look good for the facility.
Corporate bodies, as part of corporate social responsibilities,
with 50 years behind it, Pantan Hospital is looking ahead with a renewed call for investment in infrastructure to ensure it continues to serve future generations.
It's time for business now.
The Business Brief is brought to you by CompuGhana. Passion for technology.
And in business, according to the World Bank's 2025 policy notes, Ghana has spent 40 out of its 68 years under International Monetary Fund programs. In the policy notes titled Transforming Ghana in a Generation, the nation has entered 17 IMF programs. According to the report, without reforms, growth plateaus around 3.8%, delaying upper middle income status beyond 2050. It emphasized that governance challenges persist in obstructing policy reforms and structural transformation, highlighting that persistent fiscal discipline, inefficiencies and mismanagement continue to erode trust. It warned that heavy reliance on natural resources limited structural transformation and productivity gains. The report also mentioned that the real risk is complacency and business as usual. It warned of growth stagnation at 3.8% and delayed universal middle income status. The risks are insufficient quality job creation, high poverty, widening regional gaps, fiscal fragility, and environmental degradation. And that'll be all for business on the segment.
The Business Brief was brought to you by CompuGhana, passion for technology.
Again.
Welcome back to the bulletin. Let's have some sports news now. In sports, coach of Heart of Oak, Dede Dramani, is anticipating a tough contest against 11 Wonders in the team's next match in the Ghana Premier League. The Phobians will take on the new entrants on Friday at Accra Sports Stadium. Keen on leading his team to victory, Dede Dramani has indicated that his team was set up strongly from the onset to impose their authority on 11 Wonders.
I think that they are a very strong side, they are a very disciplined side, they are a very but we try to impose our authority in terms of our style of play and in terms of our game model. And so we are very positive in terms of how we have to approach. We just have to be able to take the necessary spaces that are needed and then try as much as possible to control the game when we don't have the ball. The assets of the club is the support base, and so we respect and we
She says she had faced with the Ghana Weightlifting Federation. In an exclusive interview to be aired this Friday at 9:30 p.m., Abba Hughes revealed her frustration after she was not registered for the upcoming World Championship, despite submitting her request ahead of the deadline. The 26-year-old has therefore appealed to the Federation to put personal differences aside and focus on their mandate of supporting and developing weightlifters in the country.
I feel like, for example, not being registered, why? There's supposed to be protocol. Whether the person doing the registration has a personal agenda with the athlete or not, it shouldn't make them not register somebody. Whether you like somebody or not, it's your job. You should be able to. It shouldn't affect the athlete's career. Things like that. Those are little issues. Organization, funding, not allowing sponsors to sponsor individual athletes, because at the end of the day, we all have individual strengths, and individual companies seek different types of athletes. So if an athlete has a potential sponsor, and the federation is saying, you know what, we're not allowing you to go to a competition, it doesn't do any good for the athlete or the nation as a whole, because then you see a decline in companies that want to sponsor Ghanaian athletes. They don't want to touch it because they're like, okay, this stuff goes on way too much in Ghana. We can't do that. So these little things are stuff that we should really come together and just sit down and realize that while these little drama is happening in Ghana, other countries are being better, rising. Other African countries, Nigeria is doing it. We can't sit there and let Nigeria keep taking the cake.
And that brings us to the end of sport. Some local stories now. Order has returned to the bustling central market in the Western North region after the district assembly took a firm step to decongest the area. The exercise, led by the district chief executive, is part of measures to ease human and vehicular movement and restore sanity in the market.
The usual chaotic scenes around the Nsaura Central Market are beginning to give way to order and relief thanks to decisive action by local authorities. The Seshui Akotombra District Assembly launched a sweeping decongestion exercise to restore sanity to the bustling market area. The exercise, led by the district chief executive, Joseph Appiah, cleared hawkers and removed unauthorized tricycles, vehicles, and motorists who had taken over pavements and streets. Joseph Appiah insisted that the assembly would no longer tolerate trading on walkways and illegal parking.
It is simple. All the market women have encroached the road, so the cars passing cannot move. and this can injure people. They should go beyond the safety guard for them to at least trade very well.
Joseph Appiah also used the opportunity to highlight plans for a 24-hour economy market project to be constructed in Nsawara, which he said will boost commerce and create jobs.
Close to $11 billion. As per the guidelines that was provided to us, we are supposed to use the District Assembly Common Fund, 25% of it.
Some traders welcomed the initiative but expressed worry about the impact of the exercise on their businesses.
That's your question. That boy has said, Babaka, Moto Leka, Mushia, no Mukunipa. If they are my watcher, and then they never see no. If they don't have enough pay it a year, as you are before they are watching, if you are slab by one boy, no marriage animal.
The decongestion exercise forms part of the Assembly's broader plan to ensure safety, orderliness, and a thriving business environment at the Nsawara Central Market.
KG1. Echo KG2 and the class 1. Ebi be was again. Yeah, the police station kakra be ko. Ade ba ko san head before e jasese. It the fire service for be kakra be show.
It's time for international news now. The crimes in Gaza must stop. The words of President Mahama when he addressed the 80th session of the UN General Assembly earlier today. He also condemned the denial of visas for the Palestinian delegation to the event. Take a look.
The denial of visas to President Abbas and the Palestinian delegation sets a bad precedent and should be deeply worrying to all member nations of the United Nations. Ghana recognized the state of Palestine in 1988 and supported a two-state solution to the conflict since then. And I say, contrary to the claims of some, a two-state solution would not be a reward for Hamas. It would rather be a reprieve for the hundreds of thousands of innocent women and children and people who are facing collective punishment and forced starvation for no reason other than the fact that they are Palestinian. For nearly 2 years and for the fear of reprisals, we here in this General Assembly have been playing hide and seek with language to find the right words to help us avoid or excuse what we all know is taking place in Gaza. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter what you call it. If it looks like a duck, it swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, well, then it must be a duck. The crimes in Gaza must stop.
Well, let's have a conversation on this. Vladimir Entry, Vladimir Entry Danso is international relations expert. Dr. Vladimir, good to have you on the program, sir. I want to find out from you, what do you make of the president's firm and bold stance on Gaza?
Thank you for having me. Well, that was a bold declaration, which is good, in the sense that, yes, what it is, must name it as it is. Such offensive diplomacy is very much needed at such fora. And nailed it right there. What is happening in Gaza must stop. And everybody knows it must stop. Everybody knows it must stop. So those who think you reward Hamas for recognizing Palestine are wrong. And I'm very happy that this is a huge contradiction to what President Trump said. And that boldness must be applauded on the side of President Mahama. Unfortunately, most of the things he's saying over there about reparation, about the restructuring of the UN and whatnot, are not new. We have lamented these for 30 years. Kofi Annan tried very hard to reconstruct the framework for security so that we will all be under multilateralism. But it's not working because of the structure we put in place in 1945, which is, he rightly says, is outdated. So what we need is a bold attempt at asking the UN to not just reform itself, because that reform will have a catch-22. It will go back to the P5 for the P5 to pay, and they will veto it. So what we need is a completely new charter. Can we have a new charter for the 21st century? In 1648, we had a new charter for a new world, the Westphalian system. In 1918, we ended the First World War with the League of Nations. In 1945, we ended the Second World War with this new charter. After the Cold War, people thought it was not a war, but it was the defining metaphor for conducting international behavior. That is dead, and yet we are clinging on to it. So the need for a completely new charter to spell out what we need for the world in the 21st century. That is when we can spell out most of the things that the president is talking about.
Right, Doc. In few seconds, I want to pick your thoughts. I mean, you clearly have lauded the president for his bold stance on this, but there are some concerns that this may cost us when it comes to relationships with the Western world. What do you make of that?
I don't believe so.
Right.
They know. I don't believe that it will help to bring any problem. If Israel is annoyed with that, so be it. So what is wrong? What South Africa did? Has South Africa died? No. This is a bold attempt, and we shouldn't believe that Israel is going to be annoyed with us, America is going to be annoyed, and therefore Ghana will die. They are not going to invade us. He has said it as it should be said.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Vladimir Nchidanso. He's an international relations expert. Thank you so much for bringing us your thoughts on this. Let's do some international stories now.